The wrench slipped from my fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of my garage. Through the thin walls of my house, I could hear Sarah's voice, sharp and urgent, cutting through the midnight silence like a blade. You'll have to leave before Jake gets home from the shop tomorrow. Don't worry about him. He's too dense to notice anything anyway. Dense. That's what my fiancée of 3 years called me while I was 20 feet away, fixing the transmission on Mrs. Peterson's Honda because she couldn't afford the dealership prices. Dense, like the guy who built half this house with his own hands, who'd been paying her law school loans for 2 years, who worked 16-hour days so she could chase her dream of becoming a prosecutor. I wiped the grease off my hands with an old rag and crept closer to the kitchen window. Sarah was pacing back and forth, her phone pressed tight against her ear, wearing that silk nightgown I'd bought her for Christmas. The one she said was too fancy for every day. I know it's risky, Miles, but Jake's been working late all week. He won't suspect anything. She paused, listening. What do you mean? What if he finds out? He won't. Trust me, I know how to handle him. Miles. I'd heard that name before, whispered in her sleep, mentioned casually when she talked about her study group. Miles the law student, Miles the brilliant one, Miles who understood her ambitions in ways I apparently never could. My stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a handful of bolts. 3 years. 3 years of planning a wedding, of her promising we'd start a family after she passed the bar, of me believing that her late nights and weekend study sessions were just temporary sacrifices for our future. He's so focused on that stupid garage, he barely pays attention to anything else, Sarah continued. Besides, even if he did notice something, what's he going to do? Jake's not exactly the confrontational type. Not the confrontational type. She was right about that, at least. I'd always been the guy who fixed things quietly, who avoided drama, who believed that hard work and loyalty were enough to build a life on. But standing there in my own garage, listening to my fiancée plan her next betrayal, I felt something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. I backed away from the window and sat down heavily on my workbench. The garage smelled like motor oil and metal shavings, familiar scents that usually brought me comfort. Tonight they just reminded me how far apart our worlds had grown. While I was building engines, she was apparently building a whole other life. The phone call ended, and I heard her footsteps crossing the kitchen floor. I waited until the bedroom door closed before I moved, creeping through the back door and into the house like a thief in my own home. Sarah had left her purse on the kitchen counter, and sticking out of the side pocket was a phone I'd never seen before. Not her usual iPhone with the cracked screen she'd been meaning to replace. This was a sleek black Android, the kind you buy with cash at a convenience store when you don't want anyone tracking your calls. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The screen was still warm from her grip, and when I swiped it open, there were no security locks, no passwords, just a single contact listed under M and a thread of messages that made my blood run cold. M, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Jake working late again? Sarah, always. Sometimes I think he loves that garage more than me. M, his loss, wear the red dress. Sarah, the one Jake bought me for our anniversary? M, perfect. I love the irony. I scrolled up, my eyes burning as I read weeks of messages, plans for hotel meetings, complaints about my boring personality, jokes about how I wouldn't know romance if it hit me with a wrench. And photos. God, the photos. Sarah in lingerie I'd never seen, posing in what looked like an expensive hotel room. Miles, a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad, wearing my old college t-shirt, the one that had gone missing from our laundry months ago, and worst of all, a picture of them together in our bed, on the sheets I'd bought, under the ceiling fan I'd installed myself. I set the phone down carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. The rage I'd expected didn't come. Instead, I felt something colder, more calculating. Sarah thought I was dense, predictable, too focused on my work to notice her games. Maybe it was time to show her just how wrong she was. I didn't confront Sarah that night. Instead, I did what I always did when I needed to think. I went to work. Ray's boxing gym opened at 5 a.m., and Ray himself was always there by 4:30, nursing his first cup of coffee and reading yesterday's sports section. You look like hell, Jake, Ray said when I walked through the door. He was a man of few words, built like a fire hydrant and twice as tough. He'd been running this gym for 20 years, ever since a bad knee ended his semi-pro career. What's eating you? Sarah's cheating on me, I said, hitting the heavy bag without wrapping my hands first. The pain felt good, honest in a way nothing else had for months. Ray set down his coffee and studied me with those sharp gray eyes that had seen everything twice. You sure? I told him about the phone, the messages, the photos. Ray listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding like he'd heard this story before. "So what are you going to do about it?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. Confront her, I guess. Call off the wedding." That's what she expects you to do. Probably what she wants if she's being this sloppy about hiding it. Ray stood up and tossed me a pair of gloves. Question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about that while I worked the bag for an hour, sweat washing away the sleepless night and the taste of betrayal. By the time I left for my shop, I had a plan. First, I needed to protect myself. I stopped by my lawyer's office. Not Sarah's firm, but Tom Morrison, who'd handled my dad's estate. Tom was old school, the kind of lawyer who still kept paper files and believed in handshake deals. "I need to separate my finances," I told him, quietly. Tom raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. By lunch, we'd moved my business accounts to a different bank and set up a new personal account that Sarah couldn't access. It wasn't much. The garage made decent money, but nothing spectacular. But it was mine. Next, I called Sarah's sister, Jennifer. Jen had always been my ally in the family, the one person who seemed to understand that I loved Sarah despite our differences. If anyone would listen to reason, it would be her. "Jake, what a nice surprise," Jen said when she answered. "Sarah said you've been working crazy hours lately." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about," I said carefully. "Have you noticed anything different about Sarah lately?" There was a pause. "Different how?" I told her about finding the phone, about the messages and photos. I kept my voice calm, factual, like I was diagnosing a problem with someone's engine. But Jen's response wasn't what I expected. "Oh, Jake," she sighed. "I was wondering when this would come up." "You knew?" I suspected. Sarah's been distant lately when we talk, and she mentioned this Miles guy a few times. But honey, are you sure you're not reading too much into this? Sarah's under a lot of pressure with the bar exam coming up. I saw the photos, Jen. They were in our bed. Another pause, longer this time. "Look, Jake, I love you like a brother, you know that. But maybe this is a sign that you two need to work on your relationship. When's the last time you took her somewhere nice? When's the last time you really talked about something other than work?" I felt like she'd punched me in the stomach. "Are you seriously suggesting this is my fault?" "I'm not saying it's your fault, but relationships take work from both sides. Maybe if you paid more attention to her emotional needs." I hung up. That evening, I tried Sarah's mother. Linda had always been polite to me, if not exactly warm. She was a retired teacher, the kind of woman who believed in proper behavior and moral standards. Surely she'd understand that cheating was wrong, regardless of the circumstances. "Mrs. Chen," I said when she answered, "I need to talk to you about Sarah." "Of course, dear. Is everything all right? You sound upset." I explained the situation again, choosing my words even more carefully this time. Linda listened without interrupting, making small sympathetic noises that gave me hope. "Oh my," she said when I finished. "This is quite serious. I thought you should know before I confront Sarah about it. I wanted to give her family a chance to—" "Jake, dear, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you absolutely certain about what you saw? Sometimes when we're feeling insecure in a relationship, we can misinterpret innocent things." I closed my eyes and counted to 10. "Mrs. Chen, I saw photos of them together, in our bed." "Well, that does sound concerning, but Jake, you have to understand. Sarah is going through a very stressful time right now. The bar exam, the pressure of starting her career, planning a wedding. Sometimes people make mistakes when they're overwhelmed. So I should just ignore it? I'm saying maybe you should think about what drove her to this point. Sarah is a brilliant, ambitious woman. She needs a partner who can match her intellectually, who can support her dreams. Have you been doing that?" The conversation ended much like the one with Jennifer. By the time I hung up, I was beginning to understand that Sarah's family had already chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. I waited 3 days before confronting Sarah. 3 days of watching her lie to my face, of listening to her make plans for our wedding while she texted her lover, of pretending everything was normal while I documented every deception. She made it easy. On Thursday night, she announced she was going to a study group that would run late. I followed her. The Riverside Inn was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour, a faded motel on the outskirts of town where the neon sign buzzed and half the letters were burned out. Sarah's car was parked next to a silver BMW that looked like it cost more than I made in 6 months. I sat in my truck across the street and waited. An hour later, Sarah emerged from room 237, followed by a tall guy with perfect hair and clothes that screamed money. Miles. He looked exactly like his photos, like someone who'd never worked with his hands or worried about paying bills. They kissed goodbye in the parking lot, long and passionate, like lovers in a movie. Sarah was wearing the red dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary. The one she'd said was too fancy for every day, but apparently perfect for cheating. I drove home and waited. Sarah came through the door at 11:30, carrying her law books and wearing a tired expression that I now recognized as performance art. "How was study group?" I asked from the kitchen table. "Exhausting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We covered constitutional law for 4 hours straight. I'm wiped out." I slid the burner phone across the table. "Funny, this says you were at the Riverside Inn." Sarah's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, fear, anger, and finally, defiance. "You went through my phone?" "Your secret phone, the one you used to coordinate your affair." "Jake, I can explain." "Explain what? Explain how you've been screwing some law student for months while I paid your bills? Explain how you've been using our bed for your little photo shoots? Explain how you told him I was too dense to notice?" Sarah sat down heavily, her shoulders sagging. For a moment, I thought she might actually apologize, might show some genuine remorse. Instead, she looked up at me with eyes full of resentment. "You want to know the truth, Jake? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Miles. Yes, I've been lying to you, but can you honestly say you're surprised?" "Actually, yeah, I'm pretty fucking surprised." "Really?" "Because I've been trying to tell you for months that we're not compatible. I've been trying to get you to see that we want different things from life." "By cheating on me?" "By showing you that there are men out there who actually understand me, men who can talk about something other than carburetors and football, men who have ambitions beyond fixing cars for the rest of their lives." The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my voice steady. "So, this is my fault." "It's nobody's fault, Jake. We're just different people. I need someone who can challenge me intellectually, someone who shares my goals and dreams. Miles understands my ambitions. He supports my career. I've been supporting your career for 3 years. I paid for your law school. I worked overtime so you could focus on studying. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Supporting me financially isn't the same as understanding who I am as a person. And who are you as a person, Sarah? Because the person I thought I knew wouldn't lie to my face for months. The person I thought I knew wouldn't screw around behind my back and then blame me for it." Sarah stood up, her face flushing with anger. "The person you thought you knew was suffocating in this relationship. Do you have any idea what it's like to be with someone who has no interest in growing, in becoming something more than they are? You're content to stay in this little town, fixing cars and drinking beer with Ray, but I want more from life." "Then why didn't you just break up with me?" "Because I was trying to make it work. I was hoping you'd change, that you'd develop some ambition, some intellectual curiosity, but you never did. You're exactly the same person you were when we met, and that's not enough for me anymore." The conversation continued for another hour, but the basic pattern never changed. Sarah had cheated because I wasn't good enough for her. I was too simple, too satisfied with my life, too intellectually inferior to deserve her loyalty. Every accusation I made was turned back on me. Every betrayal was justified by my shortcomings. When she finally went to bed, in the guest room at my insistence, I sat in the kitchen and called my mother. "Jake, it's past midnight. Is everything okay?" I told her about the affair, about the confrontation, about Sarah's explanations and justifications. My mother listened patiently, making sympathetic sounds that reminded me why I'd always been able to talk to her about anything. "Oh, honey," she said when I finished, "I'm so sorry. This must be devastating for you." "It is. But Mom, the way she talked about it, like it was somehow my fault for not being good enough for her. Well, Jake, you have to understand that Sarah is under a lot of pressure right now." I felt the world tilt sideways. "What?" "I'm not excusing what she did, but honey, you two have been having problems for a while now. Remember last Christmas when you got into that argument about moving to the city? Sarah's been trying to tell you that she needs more from this relationship. So I deserve to be cheated on? Of course not. But Jake, sweetheart, you have to take some responsibility here. When's the last time you took Sarah somewhere nice? When's the last time you talked about her dreams, her goals? All you ever want to discuss is the garage or sports or..." I hung up on my own mother. The next morning, I packed Sarah's belongings. Everything that was hers, everything that reminded me of her, everything that connected her to my life. I put it all in boxes and stacked them by the front door. When Sarah came downstairs, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a folder full of papers. "What's all this?" she asked, looking at the boxes. "Your stuff. I want you out." "Jake, we need to talk about this rationally. We can work through this if we both..." "There's nothing to work through. You cheated on me, you blame me for it, and now you're leaving. It's pretty simple." Sarah sat down across from me, her face shifting into what I now recognized as her courtroom expression. Calm, reasonable, persuasive. Look, I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be angry. What I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. But throwing away 3 years over one mistake... One mistake? Sarah, you've been screwing this guy for months. You have a secret phone. You've been planning these meetings, lying to my face, laughing about how stupid I am with your boyfriend. That's not one mistake. That's a deliberate choice to betray everything we built together. You're right. You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. But Jake, if we're being honest, our relationship has been in trouble for a long time. Maybe this is a wake-up call for both of us. Maybe we can use this to build something stronger. I slid the folder across the table. These are the papers to call off the wedding. I've already talked to the venue, the caterer, the photographer. Most of the deposits are non-refundable, but that's my problem, not yours. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Jake, please. And I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. I'll end things with Miles. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. You can't earn back something you never valued in the first place. That's when she started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she'd used during arguments before. For a moment, I almost wavered. 3 years of shared memories, of planning a future together, of believing we were building something permanent. Then I remembered the photos of her and Miles in our bed, and the moment passed. I need you to leave, I said quietly. Today. Sarah called in reinforcements. First Jennifer, then her mother, then finally my own mother. They all had the same message. I was being unreasonable, unforgiving, too proud to see that relationships require compromise and forgiveness. She made a mistake, Jake, my mother said when she arrived that afternoon. A terrible mistake, but people can change. If you love her. If I love her, I should let her cheat on me? If you love her, you should fight for your relationship instead of throwing it away the first time things get difficult. The first time? Mom, she's been lying to me for months. She's been planning these meetings, taking photos in our bed, telling her boyfriend how stupid I am. This isn't a one-time mistake. It's a pattern of betrayal. But honey, you have to ask yourself why she felt the need to look elsewhere. What was missing in your relationship that drove her to this? I stared at my mother, this woman who'd raised me to believe in honesty and loyalty and keeping your word. Are you seriously asking me what I did wrong to deserve being cheated on? I'm asking you to take some responsibility for the problems in your relationship. The only problem in my relationship was that my fiancé was screwing another man. My mother sighed, the way she used to when I was a kid, and refused to see reason. Jake, you're a good man, but you can be very stubborn. Sarah is a brilliant, ambitious woman who needs intellectual stimulation. If you can't provide that, then she should have broken up with me instead of cheating on me. Sometimes people make poor choices when they're feeling trapped and desperate. Trapped? I never trapped her. She was free to leave anytime she wanted. Was she? Really? You've been together for 3 years, Jake. You've built a life together, made plans, commitments. It's not always easy to just walk away from that, even when you're unhappy. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. This woman who'd taught me right from wrong, who'd punished me for lying about homework or breaking curfew, was now defending someone who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way. Get out, I said quietly. Jake, get out of my house. Now. My mother left, but not before delivering one final lecture about pride and forgiveness and the importance of fighting for love. Jennifer tried calling that evening, then Sarah's mother, then several mutual friends who'd heard about our problems and wanted to help us work things out. The message was always the same. I was being unreasonable. Sarah had made a mistake, but she was sorry. Relationships required forgiveness. I was throwing away something beautiful over my wounded pride. By the end of the week, I'd blocked every number that carried that message. Sarah was gone. She'd moved in with Miles, apparently. And I was alone in the house we'd shared, surrounded by the silence I'd thought I wanted. The months that followed were the loneliest of my life, but also the clearest. Without Sarah's constant criticism of my limited ambitions and my family's pressure to be someone I wasn't, I rediscovered who I actually was. I threw myself into work. The garage had always been profitable, but I'd been content to maintain the status quo. Now I expanded, hired 2 more mechanics, started offering specialized services for classic cars. Word spread, and soon I was getting customers from 3 counties over. I bought new equipment, reorganized the shop, even started a small side business restoring vintage motorcycles. The work was satisfying in a way that planning a wedding with someone who thought I wasn't good enough for her had never been. Ray became my closest confidant. Most evenings found me at his gym, working out my frustrations on the heavy bag or learning to box properly. Ray had a way of cutting through bullshit that I'd always appreciated. "You hear from any of them?" he asked one evening in October. "Nope, complete radio silence. It's like I never existed." "Good. Means your bullshit detector is working properly." Sometimes I wonder if they were right, though. Maybe I was too stubborn, too unforgiving. Ray stopped wrapping his hands and looked at me seriously. "Let me ask you something, Jake. If one of your customers brought you a car and said, 'I've been putting sugar in the gas tank for months, but I'm sorry, so can you just ignore the damage and pretend it never happened?' What would you tell them?" "I'd tell them they need a new engine." "Exactly. Some things can't be fixed, only replaced. Your family and your ex, they put sugar in your gas tank and then asked you to pretend the engine wasn't ruined." In November, I heard through the town grapevine that Sarah had passed the bar exam and gotten a job at a prestigious firm in the city. Miles apparently had flunked out of law school and was now working as a life coach on social media. The irony wasn't lost on me. I also heard that my mother had been telling people I was going through a difficult phase, and that she was praying I'd come to my senses soon. Jennifer, according to mutual friends, was convinced that I was having some kind of breakdown and just needed time to process my emotions. None of them had tried to contact me directly. Apparently, my refusal to accept responsibility for Sarah's affair had convinced them that I was beyond reason. They were waiting for me to come crawling back, apologetic and ready to admit that I'd been wrong. They were going to wait a long time. Christmas came and went without a single card or call from my family. I spent the day at Ray's house, eating dinner with his wife and kids, and feeling more welcome than I had in years. New Year's Eve found me working late at the shop, finishing a restoration project that had taken months to complete. I wasn't hiding from the world, but I wasn't seeking out company either. The few friends who'd remained neutral during the whole mess occasionally invited me out for drinks or dinner, and I usually accepted. But I found myself preferring the quiet satisfaction of work and the straightforward honesty of engines that either ran properly or didn't. By March, I'd stopped thinking about Sarah every day. By April, I'd stopped wondering if I'd made the right choice. By May, I was sleeping through the night without dreaming about confrontations and betrayals. I thought I'd found peace. I thought the worst was behind me. Then, on a rainy evening in early June, exactly 6 months after I'd last spoken to any of them, someone knocked on my door. Sarah stood on my porch, soaked from the rain, her hands pressed protectively over a belly that was unmistakably pregnant. She looked smaller than I remembered, more fragile, with dark circles under her eyes and a vulnerability that seemed genuine. "Hi, Jake," she said quietly. I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in, not closing the door, just looking at her and feeling absolutely nothing. No anger, no hurt, no residual love, nothing. "What do you want, Sarah?" "Can I come in, please? I'm getting soaked out here." I stepped aside and let her into the living room. She looked around at the changes I'd made. New furniture, fresh paint, photos from my motorcycle restoration projects where our engagement pictures used to hang. "The place looks good," she said. "Different, but good." "What do you want?" I repeated. Sarah sat down heavily on my new couch, her hand still cradling her belly. "I'm pregnant." "I can see that. Congratulations." "Jake, the baby is yours." I felt that familiar coldness settle in my chest, the same calculating calm I'd discovered the night I found her burner phone. "No, it's not." "Yes, it is. I know you don't want to hear this, but we were together right before everything fell apart. The timing works out perfectly." "The timing works out for Miles, too." Sarah's face flushed. "This isn't about Miles. This is about us, about our baby." "There is no us, Sarah. There hasn't been for 6 months." "Jake, please. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible mistakes. But this changes everything. We're going to be parents. We have a responsibility to this child." I sat down across from her, studying her face the way I'd study a complex engine problem. Sarah had always been a good liar, but pregnancy hormones seemed to have affected her performance. She couldn't quite meet my eyes, and her voice had that slightly rehearsed quality I remembered from her law school practice sessions. "Where's Miles?" I asked. "That's over. It's been over for months." "Since when?" "Since I found out I was pregnant. Since I realized what really mattered." "And what really matters?" "Family. Commitment. Building something lasting together." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Jake, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but this baby does deserve a father. A real father who'll be there every day, not some weekend visitor paying child support." "You're assuming I'm the father." "I know you're the father." "How?" Sarah hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. Because I know when we were together, and I know when the baby was conceived. What about Miles? What about him? Were you sleeping with him around the same time you think this baby was conceived? Another hesitation. That's not relevant. It's completely relevant, Sarah. If you were sleeping with both of us, then either one of us could be the father. I'm telling you, the baby is yours. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain. Behind me, I could hear Sarah shifting on the couch, probably preparing her next argument. She'd always been good at reading people, at finding their weak spots and exploiting them. But 6 months of silence had taught me to recognize manipulation when I heard it. Here's what we're going to do, I said without turning around. We're going to get a DNA test. Jake, that's not necessary. I'm telling you. We're going to get a DNA test, I repeated. If the baby is mine, I'll take full responsibility. I'll pay child support. I'll be involved in the kid's life. I'll do everything a father should do. But if the baby isn't mine, I never want to see you again. You're being cruel. I'm being careful. There's a difference. Sarah started crying then, the kind of desperate sobs that would have broken my heart 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like another manipulation tactic, another way to avoid taking responsibility for her choices. I can't believe you'd put me through that, she said between sobs. I can't believe you'd doubt me about something this important. I doubt you about everything, Sarah. You spent months lying to my face, and now you show up pregnant, claiming the baby is mine, expecting me to just take your word for it? That's not how this works. What if I refuse? Then I'll assume the baby isn't mine and act accordingly. Sarah was quiet for a long time, staring down at her hands. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by something harder, more calculating. My family thinks you should do the right thing, she said. Your family can think whatever they want. Your family agrees. That got my attention. You've been talking to my family? They're worried about you, Jake. Your mother says you've been isolating yourself, refusing to answer calls or emails. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. And you thought you'd swoop in and save me? I thought I'd give you a chance to be part of your child's life. If it's my child. It is your child. Sarah's voice rose, and for the first time since she'd arrived, I heard genuine emotion instead of calculated manipulation. God, Jake, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you, but I would never lie about something like this. You lied about everything else. This is different. How? Because this isn't about us anymore. This is about an innocent baby who deserves better than parents who can't even have a civil conversation. I turned away from the window and looked at her directly. You're right. This baby does deserve better. It deserves parents who are honest with each other, who respect each other, who don't cheat and lie and blame their partners for their own failures. So let's start with honesty. Get the DNA test, and we'll know for sure. Sarah stood up slowly, her hand pressed against her back like the pregnancy was causing her pain. Fine. We'll do the test. But Jake, when it proves that you're the father, I hope you'll remember this conversation. I hope you'll remember that I came here trying to do the right thing, and you treated me like a criminal. If the baby is mine, we'll figure out how to co-parent effectively. But Sarah, we're never getting back together. That part of our relationship is over permanently. I'm not asking for that. Aren't you? Sarah didn't answer, but she didn't need to. I could see it in her eyes, the same entitled expectation that had characterized our entire relationship. She'd made a mistake, she was sorry, and now I was supposed to forgive and forget, and go back to being the reliable, unambitious boyfriend who paid her bills and didn't ask too many questions. The DNA test was scheduled for the following week. Sarah left that night without saying goodbye, and I went back to my quiet, orderly life. But something had changed. The peace I'd found over the past 6 months felt fragile now, threatened by the possibility that I might be tied to Sarah forever through a child. I called Ray and told him about the visit, about the pregnancy, about the test. What are you hoping for? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants the baby to be mine because I always wanted kids. But part of me hopes it's not, because that would mean I could finally close this chapter completely. And if it is yours? Then I'll be the best father I can be. But I'll never trust Sarah again, and I'll never let her back into my life as anything more than the mother of my child. Sounds like you've got your head on straight. I hope so, because if this baby is mine, the real test is just beginning. The DNA test results came back on a Thursday afternoon. I was under the hood of a 1967 Mustang when my phone rang, and Dr. Martinez's voice was professionally neutral as he delivered the news. Mr. Thompson, the results are conclusive. You are not the biological father of this child. I set down my wrench and walked outside. needing fresh air to process what I'd just heard. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a cold, familiar anger. Sarah had lied again, just as I'd suspected she would. I drove to her apartment, a place I'd never seen before, in a complex that looked expensive and new. Miles answered the door, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that suggested he lived there. "Jake," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Sarah's resting right now. Maybe you could come back later?" "I think she'll want to hear this," I said, pushing past him into the living room. Sarah emerged from the bedroom, moving slowly, one hand pressed against her lower back. She took one look at my face and knew. "The results came back," I said. "Jake, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You lied. Again. The baby isn't mine." Sarah sank onto the couch, her face pale. I hoped you could manipulate me into taking responsibility for another man's child. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." I turned to Miles, who was hovering in the doorway like he wanted to disappear. "Congratulations. You're going to be a father." Miles looked like he was going to be sick. "Sarah, you said you weren't sure." "I wasn't sure," Sarah said quickly. "The timing was close, and I thought Jake might—" "You thought I might be stupid enough to fall for it," I finished. "Just like you thought I was too dense to notice your affair. That's not fair. What's not fair is lying to me about a pregnancy. What's not fair is trying to trap me into supporting another man's child. What's not fair is showing up at my door 6 months later, pretending you wanted to do the right thing when all you wanted was a backup plan because your boyfriend doesn't want to be a father." I looked around the apartment, taking in the expensive furniture and the view of the city skyline. "Nice place. I'm guessing Miles's parents are helping with the rent?" "That's none of your business," Miles said, finding his voice. "You're right. None of this is my business anymore." I headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. "Sarah, I want you to know that this is the last time we'll ever speak. I don't want to hear from you, I don't want updates about your life, and I don't want your family or mine trying to mediate between us. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist. Jake, please. And if you ever try to contact me again, if you ever show up at my house or my business, I'll file for a restraining order. Are we clear?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. Miles put his arm around her shoulders, but he was looking at me with something that might have been respect. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The last thread connecting me to Sarah was finally cut. I was free. But freedom, as it turned out, came with its own complications. I should have known my family wouldn't let it go quietly. The next evening, my mother showed up at my door with Jennifer and Sarah's mother in tow. They looked like an intervention committee, armed with disappointed expressions and moral superiority. "Jake, we need to talk," my mother said, pushing past me into the house. "About what?" "About your responsibilities," Jennifer said. "Sarah told us about the DNA test, about how you're refusing to help with the baby." I stared at them, genuinely confused. "Did she also tell you that the baby isn't mine?" "That doesn't matter," Sarah's mother said. "You were engaged to Sarah. You made a commitment to her, to building a life together. You can't just abandon her when things get difficult." "I can't abandon her? She cheated on me. She lied to me for months. She showed up pregnant, claiming the baby was mine when she knew it wasn't. And somehow I'm the one who's abandoning her?" "Sarah made mistakes," my mother said. "But she's trying to make things right. She's scared, Jake. She's about to have a baby, and she needs support. Then she should get support from the baby's actual father." "Miles isn't ready to be a father," Jennifer said. "He's young, he doesn't have a steady income, he's not mature enough to handle this kind of responsibility. And that's my problem, how?" "Because you're a good man," my mother said. "Because you have the means to help, and because it's the right thing to do." I looked at these three women, my mother, my future sister-in-law, and the woman who'd raised the person who betrayed me, and felt something snap inside my chest. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," I said slowly. "Sarah cheated on me with Miles. She got pregnant by Miles. She lied to me about the paternity to try to trick me into taking responsibility. And now that the truth is out, you want me to help raise Miles's baby because he's not ready to be a father?" "When you put it like that, it sounds unreasonable." Jennifer started. "It sounds unreasonable because it is unreasonable. It's completely insane." "Jake, honey, I know you're angry," my mother said. "But anger isn't going to help anyone here. That baby is innocent in all this. It doesn't deserve to suffer because of the mistakes the adults made." "You're right. The baby is innocent. And it deserves to have its real father step up and take responsibility, not some sucker who got manipulated into playing daddy because the real father is inconvenient." "Sarah loves you," Sarah's mother said. She's always loved you. She made a mistake, but she wants to make it right. Sarah loves the idea of having someone reliable to fall back on when her exciting boyfriend disappoints her. She doesn't love me. If she loved me, she wouldn't have cheated on me in the first place. The argument continued for another hour. They tried guilt, they tried emotional manipulation, they tried appealing to my sense of duty and honor. They painted Sarah as a victim of her own poor judgment, a woman who deserved forgiveness and support despite her betrayals. I listened to all of it with the same cold detachment I'd felt when I first discovered her affair. These people had chosen their side months ago, and it wasn't mine. They'd decided that my feelings, my dignity, and my right to honest treatment were less important than Sarah's comfort and convenience. I want all of you to leave, I said finally, and I don't want any of you to come back. Jake, you don't mean that, my mother said. I absolutely mean it. You've made it clear that you care more about Sarah's problems than about the fact that she betrayed me. You've made it clear that you think I should sacrifice my future to fix the mess she made with another man. Well, I'm done sacrificing for people who don't respect me. We're your family, Jennifer said. Family doesn't ask you to raise another man's child because the real father is inconvenient. Family doesn't blame you for being cheated on. Family doesn't show up at your house to guilt you into taking back someone who lied to your face for months. So that's it? My mother asked. You're cutting us off permanently over this? You cut me off first. You chose Sarah over me months ago. I'm just making it official. They left, but not before my mother delivered one final guilt trip about family loyalty and forgiveness. I watched their car disappear down my street and felt nothing but relief. I called Ray and told him about the confrontation. How do you feel? He asked. Free. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. Good. That means you're finally thinking clearly. They'll probably try again. Sarah's family, maybe some of our mutual friends. Let them try. You know who you are now, and you know what you're worth. Don't let anyone convince you to settle for less. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer and watched the sunset. My phone buzzed with text messages. More guilt trips, more appeals to my conscience, more attempts to make me feel responsible for Sarah's situation. I deleted them all without reading them completely. Then I blocked every number that had sent them. Some bridges, I'd learned, weren't worth rebuilding, some relationships weren't worth saving, and some people weren't worth the energy it took to forgive them. I'd spent 6 months learning to live without the people who'd betrayed me. Now I was going to spend the rest of my life proving that I was better off without them. The next morning, I changed my phone number and didn't give it to anyone except Ray and my business contacts. I sold the house. Too many memories, too many visits from people I didn't want to see. And bought a smaller place on the other side of town. I expanded my business again, hired more employees, started advertising in classic car magazines. Within a year, I had customers driving hundreds of miles to bring me their restoration projects. I heard through the grapevine that Sarah and Miles had broken up before the baby was born, that she was struggling as a single mother while trying to build her legal career. I heard that my mother was helping with childcare, that Jennifer had started a GoFundMe to help with expenses. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I felt no sympathy either. They'd made their choices, just like I'd made mine. 5 years later, I owned the most successful restoration shop in the state. I'd married a woman who appreciated my ambitions instead of resenting them, who supported my dreams instead of trying to change them. We had 2 kids and a house full of laughter and honest conversation. I never heard from Sarah again. I never heard from my mother or sister again. I never heard from any of the people who thought I should sacrifice my dignity and self-respect for the sake of family and forgiveness. I didn't miss them. I'd learned that loyalty has to be mutual, that respect has to be earned, and that some betrayals are unforgivable not because of the act itself, but because of the complete lack of remorse that follows. I'd burned every bridge that connected me to my old life, and I'd built something better from the ashes.